Hi everyone, welcome back. So today we are going to cover up how to deploy and run your local large language model using Ngrok and Google Colab. So let's first understand what Ngrok is. So Ngrok is basically a front door to distribute the incoming traffic from your local host to exposing it to directly to the internet. So mostly most of our applications run on our local host. Like whenever we do experimentation with our code and we need to test it out, it runs on the local host. So today we will be pointing our local host port to exposing that port to directly to the ngrok. So basically ngrok lets you to have an port where you have to give your local host port access to a reverse proxy. So it helps you to directly give you and leverage to pass your local host port to point it towards the ngrok. So it's very easy. What you have to do is you can log in into ngrok by visiting this site ngrok, and once you log in your ngrok account, you will have to get your authentication code, where we will be using this authentication token to pass our authentication token to any internal or external application so that they can get connected to ngrok. So this authentication token is necessary in your configuration file in order to get connected. So it's pretty easy. Let's get started about the understanding of Google Colab. So basically, Google Colab is an architecture of Google which lets you to run application using two architecture. One is the architecture of CPU and the second architecture is the GPU, General Processing Unit. So Google Colab lets you to run, build, and do different kinds of experimentation with this Jupyter notebook. So first of all, when you open your Google Colab, you will have an option of this, which is telling you the type of runtime. So our large language models needs to be run on a GPU. So we must require a GPU to run our large language models. What we need to do is we will enable this T4 GPU from Google Colab, and it will let us to run our application Ollama on the T4 GPU. So this T4 GPU will help us to run our Python environment code on a T4 GPU so that our large language model can run easily and do all the computations on this T4 GPU of Google Colab. So let's get started. First, you need to select the change. You need to select the runtime, which is the GPU. Then you have to run this command by installing the Ollama in your Colab environment. You will run this code side, and it will take some time by downloading the Ollama.sh functions, libraries, and all the dependencies it requires to run Ollama. So while it is taking time, let's get jump to the ngrok. So ngrok again, it's very easy to use. For example, you need to use ngrok in your on your Windows. You can simply download ngrok on your Windows as well, and you can point out your traffic directly to ngrok. Let me give you an example how ngrok works. So let's go to the ngrok terminal. We have downloaded this already. So now, for example, I need to run my application. For example, my Python application is running on a specific port. Let's comment this out, and we will be understanding it for the later use. So for example, my Ollama, I will do Ollama.list and see which available models do I have. So I will write Ollama list, and let's first clear it. So Ollama list, I have these models available on my machine, and what we need to do is we need to run this DeepSeek coder latest over here. Let's run this Ollama run DeepSeek coder latest, and let's pass this model name to our function over here, DeepSeek coder, and let's run this application. So basically, uh, it's going to it's already, so Ollama is running on the port. As we can see, Ollama is running over here, and the by default IP address of Ollama is 11434 port, and this is the endpoint API chat where we will be interacting with our DeepSeek coder model. Also, we can change this to Llama, but currently we just need to test it out. Let's write Python app2.py, and we just passed a prompt to the DeepSeek coder model that explain quantum physics. So while it's running, let's jump to the Colab. Oh, so it took almost 3 to 4 seconds, and we have this output already uh, on the screen. So now we need to expose this port on Ngrok. We need our local model to be exposed on the Ngrok. What you can do is you can simply write Ngrok HTTP and the application port on which your application is running. So currently our Ollama is running on 11434. So what you can get here is that you will get a forwarding IP address consisting of HTTPS, which is directly pointing towards your application. That is the localhost 11434 on which our Ollama DeepSeek model is running. Let's visit this HTTPS and we can see that Ollama is running successfully. So let's jump into our Colab notebook. So once this is done, we will run this to get some Ngrok stable Linux files in this our notebook. We will refresh this and we will get a tar file. Let's extract this Ngrok file and we will get a directory of Ngrok over here as seen. So inside the Ngrok, we have some configuration for Ngrok. This whole architecture of Ngrok, for example, IP forwarding, domain, and different things. So this Ngrok is being installed on our Colab notebook successfully. So our main goal in this video is to run the Ollama version of Llama Gamma 3, and Gamma 3 is basically most capable model that runs on a single GPU as well. So Gamma 3 is basically from the family of Gemini, built by the Google AI engineers, and Gamma have three models which consist of processing text and images, and the context window is 128. So we need to use some configurations of the Gamma. So what you can do is you can copy this command of Ollama run Gamma 3, and this will start downloading the version Gamma 3 by having the parameters of 4.3 billion. There are some variations and variants in this model, but currently we are getting downloading and using the Gamma 3 latest model. So once this is done, we will now the most important thing here in this Colab notebook is that we need to set our Ngrok authentication token. This is important because we will be interacting with our Ngrok dashboard and the Ngrok cloud infrastructure. To interact with the Ngrok, you need an authentication token. Without the authentication token, you cannot interact with this cloud infrastructure, and you cannot access the tunnel. So we will click on the secret key, and here I already have added my Ngrok authentication token. What you need to do is just copy the Ngrok authentication token, paste the name and the value, of course, the authentication token you will get after signing up. Once you have done it, we will run this, and this will get the authentication token and add this into our configuration file. So once it's done, we will write this command. This is very important to understand, and you need to know what this command is doing. So Ollama serve is basically for running a specific model, and we are running that model and pointing towards it to by default Ollama runs on the port 14434, so we are setting the header to 11434. And most importantly, you need to point out your uh, Ollama model to your Ngrok domain. So what you can do is you will come here to this domain, and you have to create a new domain and copy your domain, and then forward this domain in this uh, command. So once you do that, your domain will be pointed towards the Ollama by default port. And once it's done, you will write the dash log std out for the logs and a sleep of 5 seconds, and then of course the command for which you need to run your specific model. So currently we need to run Ollama run gamma 3 model, which I showed you earlier. So let's run this. So it will basically start downloading our gamma 3 model, and once it start downloading the model, it's completed. You will be able to see that the system RAM, the disk, and the GPU RAM. So we are concerned with the GPU. So for every API call, for every, now this is important to understand. For every post API call, the Gamma 3 will require some computations. And for every post call, whenever we call this API dash V1 chat completions, which I will show you, for which API point you need to hit the gamma 3. For the API endpoint, you must give the domain name and the endpoint V1 dash chat dash completions. And in your JSON, you need to pass the model and the messages and the role, and of course the prompt, whatever you need to ask from the gamma 3 model. So once it's done, we will be able to see a completion prompt over here that pass some user input to the gamma 3 model. So it's running and taking some time because the model is getting downloaded in the Google Colab notebook. So let's wait for it and see what happens. So yeah, our model has been successfully downloaded in our Google Colab, and here you can see we can test it by passing it any prompt like hi, and it will give us some output. So the gamma 3 is generating some output. Now the most important thing to understand is that for every prompt, um, the model large language model gamma 3 is consuming some computations for the GPU, as because it's running on the GPU. Large language models require a CPU or a GPU to run, but for better response time, we are running the gamma 3 model on GPU. Let's test it again and see what happens. Hi, let's pass the prompt of tell me hi again, and it will start giving us some output. Now we need to test this localhost 14434. Basically it's running, but we need to test our endpoint of our the domain name which we pointed towards the 1434 port running on the Ngrok. So let's copy this link and paste this in our Postman. So Postman is basically, this tool is used for testing API endpoints, and it allows user to test post, get, put, patch, delete, and different kinds of HTTP request methods. So let's we copied the domain on which our gamma 3 is running, and the endpoint we need to specify U1 chat completions. And in the JSON body, we will select the raw and write the model, the messages in which we specified the role, and the content role will be user, and the content will be, for example, we are passing explain quantum physics. So let's send this and see what happens. So we are calling our gamma 3 model from an external API from our local machine, and my IP address of this local machine is different. So you can also print it out on the Colab and see from which IP you are getting the post request from. So it is going to take some time because the prompt which I have mentioned is quite generalized, and uh, going to and the gamma 3 model is going to analyze. Also, yeah, it took 24 seconds and it generated an output of like explaining the quantum physics, what quantum physics is about, and the quantization and the core ideas about quantum physics. Now so this was the post API call, which we hit it from the postman. Now the important thing to understand is that this large language model gamma 3 is running already in the GPU. So we what we can do is we can also call the Ollama API endpoint. What we do is we can just comment this out and write an Ollama API endpoint. So this is basically a simple Python code to import request and to use the request.post method to send the request to this specific IP, and where we will specify the model name. Previously we were using DeepSeek, and now here we were using a gamma 3. Let's confirm this. Yeah, it's gamma 3 latest, and we will change the model to the gamma 3 latest. What we are doing is we are telling this Ollama API, this endpoint, is that we are passing some JSON payload parameter in which we are calling the model gamma 3 latest, and some messages in which the user and the content is basically the prompt which we are specifying. And then once it's done, we will send a prompt to our gamma 3 which is running on this specific domain inside the Google Colab environment. So let's run this and see. We are passing this again. Let's change this and say what do you know about large language models. So we are passing this prompt to the gamma 3 model, and we are expecting what the output will be when we call this Ollama API running inside the Colab environment. Let's run this and see what happens. So the user input is what do you know about large language models, and here we are going to hit our post API call, that is the gamma running, and it is going to take some time because the large language models context is quite big, and it consists of a lot of data to first the large language model to first analyze and see what to produce. So yeah, so it took almost 8 to 9 seconds, and it gave us an output of that these large language models includes the description for different large language models and capabilities, and a bunch of information for the user in question we asked. Now the important thing to understand is that what is the need of Ngrok, and what is the point of using the Colab notebook. Now the first of all, Ngrok lets you to create public HTTP and HTTPS endpoints which with some host names that matches the domain, and by using such endpoints you can call these large language models from any external or internal API endpoints, and you can easily deploy and build your applications. Now in this lecture we understood the concept of Colab, how the Google Colab works, and how we can run some gamma 3 model, different large language models like gamma 3, DeepSeek, and other available models on Ollama on Google Colab. In which we are utilizing the Colab GPU T4, and then exposing our Ollama endpoint to the Ngrok domain name. So I will share the Google Colab notebook in this lecture, and you can easily point out and download and run and do experimentation on Google Colab. So thank you very much. Looking forward to see you in the next lecture, where we will be deploying this app.py file in a Docker environment, and then running it in a Hugging Face environment. So make sure you run this Colab notebook and experiment it out. And if you have any question or query, do let me know. And if you have any suggestions, I would love to hear from you. Thank you.